He told me how he chose this family. He said, "I've been watching you. You know, there's windows in heaven, Mama."
She couldn't take it. She was so frightened. She was shaking and clinging to me.
She was certain that the building was going to collapse.
He kept saying, "It shouldn't have happened, it shouldn't have happened." He would sweat, cry, scream. That was far from the worst of it.
It was very upsetting that it kept happening.
I felt completely helpless. It was horrible to watch.
I thought she was having a memory of a past life.
He had to have been on this ship. There's just no way that he would know all these things.
It kind of felt like she was sending me a message.
I still can't explain what happened that day, but I'll never forget it.
Madison, Wisconsin is the state capital of Wisconsin, and it's very diverse. It's a university town. The winters are a little hard, but it's usually pretty beautiful here, and the people are great. I was married when I was quite young, and I had my daughter, Teal, and then John and I had Jamey 18 years later, and Jamey is my son.
Jamey was a great baby. He's just been the greatest kid ever. I can't say enough good things about him.
He was always very happy and joyful, you know, enjoyed everything that he did, had a great attention span for learning things, and he was really easy. He was an easy kid.
I'm a forensic psychologist, and Jamey is my little brother. The age difference between Jamey and I is about 17 years. I was actually in college at the time when it all started.
Everybody in my family loves to swim. You know, we all love the water, so we had a swimming pool. Jamey would never go down past the stairs of the pool, and even if I would pick him up and take him out into the water, he would completely panic, practically choke you, begging you to take him back into the shallow part of the pool. He was terrified of the deep end of the pool.
Most kids have a natural aptitude or liking for water if that's what their parents display, and we all love water. To my knowledge, he didn't have any experiences that were negative, but he hated it. He was afraid ever since the beginning, so I didn't know what to attribute it to. When Jamey was about 3 or 4, he was young because he was trying to learn to ride a small bike. I was outside with him trying to encourage him to ride the bike, and he started talking about seeing our mom riding a bike down the same street. And he said, "Mom rode her blue bike. I saw her ride her blue bike." And I said, "Where did you see her? Like in a picture, like photograph?" And he said, "No, I looked down and saw her through the window."
I did have a little blue 3-wheeler that I used to ride, and that would have been, for me, around the age of 5, and he knew about it. I had never mentioned it to him before. I don't even think I have a picture of it. And he said that he used to watch me. And I said, "How did you watch me?" And then he was kind of indignant about it. He goes, "Well, you know, there's windows in heaven, Mama." When he was a child, he actually had a little bit of an English accent to some things that he would say.
Jamey had a speech impediment when he was very young, and so when he started saying things in an accent from time to time, I figured it was just part of the speech impediment. It was really when he started using different terminology to say things that I thought it was strange. He always used port and starboard to indicate left and right. I figured he must just be picking them up somewhere. I thought it might have been that he saw something on television that he was really enamored with and that he would just start using those expressions. I remember I used to try to correct him, and he would not say right or left. He only said port or starboard.
When Jamey was around 4 or 5 years old, he started having night terrors. He would be asleep, he'd go to bed, and you'd hear him, you know, thrashing around a little bit. and then all of a sudden he'd come running. He didn't look at you, he didn't look at his surroundings, but he always seemed panicked, like he was looking for a way to get out. He seemed to be greatly distressed, and it was very frustrating for me. I had no idea what to do about any of it.
It did concern us when he kept having these night terrors, and we talked to his doctor about it, who explained that it was a little more common than we thought for someone to sleepwalk. And we were concerned about it because it was very upsetting that it kept happening.
Night terrors is a good word for them. They were terrifying. But this was just the beginning.
Payson, Arizona is a small town about an hour and a half north of Phoenix.
It's kind of a sleepy town, cowboy town, antiquing town. My wife, Heather, and I are both artists.
Daryl and I have 3 children. Our oldest is 22. He's a medic in the Army. And then we have 2 younger children, Thalia and Cirrus. Our daughter Thalia was born in 2002.
The moment she was born, I didn't know what to say. It was just amazing to see her.
When Thalia was little, Daryl and her were very close immediately.
She was the happiest kid I have ever seen. She woke up laughing or smiling. Never anything other. If she fell down, bumped her head, she'd just dust herself off and keep on going. Happy was her natural state of being.
She spoke early, she potty trained early, she did everything early. Thalia was a very exceptional child.
We moved to Costa Rica in 2003. Soon after arriving in Costa Rica, we opened a little sandwich shop right on the beach. When we'd made the move to Costa Rica, Thalia was 1 year and 1 month old. The first time Thalia said anything that we thought was odd or out of the ordinary, she was about 3 years old. She was just sitting quietly, being very morose and crying to herself. And we just didn't understand that. And I said, "What's the matter?" And she was in a distant place. And I was trying to get out of her what it was that was bothering her so much. And she said, "That old lady, that poor lady, that old lady, I can't help her. She needs help." And she wouldn't elaborate. We didn't have an old lady in our presence, in our lives. Nobody she saw like that. She would have these sort of crying episodes every few days for about 6 weeks or so. One of the personality traits that Thalia has always had is she's always been very caring, very sensitive to the suffering of other people. As a little kid, I think somebody got in a splinter or something, and she thought we should have a kit ready for something like that. So she collects all this different stuff, cotton swabs and iodine and bandages, and puts them all together in this little backpack that's in the back of like a little beach chair. 2 weeks later, I'm fixing our dryer. She heard me go, "Ow," and I go, "Oh, cut myself." Before I barely finished the sentence, she comes running in with the chair. She's got everything out and totally cleans and bandages me up. For a little girl, very unusual. I was sweeping the floor, and I see Thalia at the corner of my eye. She's just standing still on the edge of one of the patios, looking out over the garden. She hasn't moved. I just continue to sweep, and I still see that she hasn't moved. So I put the broom down against the railing, and I walk over, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she's got this distant stare, this look in her eyes that I've never seen before. And she just looks up at me and says, "Do you remember when we were Japanese?" Our 3-year-old daughter, Thalia, started having memories of this old lady that needed her help and was dying, and she couldn't help her. I was sweeping the floor, and I see Thalia out of the corner of my eye. And she's got this distant stare. She just looks up at me and says, "Do you remember when we were Japanese?" Aside from the shock, my first thought was, I want to know where she's taking this when she was talking about the old lady that needed help. And here she is doing it again. So I said, "What do you remember?" And she says, "Well, that's why I'm sad right now. I was thinking about that little girl." I said, "What little girl?" And she says, "The one that died. Remember? That little girl who just worked and worked and worked, and then she died? That was sad. That's what I was thinking about."
I thought it was significant that a child was talking about another child having to work so hard until she got sick. I thought that was an unusual thing for a child to speak of.
She stretched her arms up to be picked up because she was visibly upset about him. And I picked her up and I said, "Well, I think that girl's in a much better place now." And she said, "Oh, I know. I was just thinking about her and it made me sad. She's much better now and she's not so tired anymore." As she was describing this, she would speak in more adult style of language. It wasn't simple. They were complete sentences. They were complete thoughts formulated before she even said anything. It's as if she's reporting on something, a memory that is from an older person. That was very powerful. It stuck with me for weeks.
The village in Costa Rica that we were living in was very remote, and we did not have a television. She was not exposed to anything Japanese or much other culture at all. One day, just to pass the time, Gerald had taken some old newspaper and started painting.
Thalia walks up to me and she says, "Hey, Daddy, can I try?" I put some ink on the brush and I handed it to her. And she just draws out this symbol. It kind of felt like she was sending me a message.
From the age of 4 years old, Jamey started having night terrors. It's very hard because we were advised not to wake him up out of it, so we would have to kind of go through it with him. He would go to bed just fine. He would go to sleep, but then you could hear him thrashing around in his bedroom.
He would sweat, cry, scream. By the time the nightmare was done, his pajamas were literally soaked through.
And then he would bolt. He would just fly out of bed, and he would come running down the hallway, go running into rooms, and you had to make sure he didn't go down the stairs. It was horrible because we didn't know if it was ever going to go away. I felt completely helpless.
During the terror, he would talk, and he would talk about water or drowning or going under.
I started to realize that there had to be something to this, that it wasn't just a nightmare that he was having, that he had some memory of something that was extremely traumatic, and he kept fighting it. He was struggling with it.
I was trying to get my mom and everybody to be calm about it because being in psychology, I know that night terrors are actually really common. I just kind of wrote that off as not experiencing one particular thing over and over, just that he was having night terrors like normal kids do.
Jamey was around 4 years old, and we had gone out one night and left him with a babysitter. And when we came home, we found out that Jamey had watched the last half of the Titanic movie, which is not something we were happy about. And the next day, he started drawing and painting picture after picture of the Titanic. Within the first 2 weeks, he probably had painted 50 pictures. At first, I thought it was just because he saw the movie. And the movie is very emotional, and I thought that that was all it was until the obsession didn't go away. No matter where he went, on his notebooks, in school, on placemats, he drew the Titanic over and over and over again.
I didn't know it then, but that was far from the worst of it.
Jamey started drawing and painting picture after picture of the Titanic. The obsession part of it was disconcerting because we couldn't stop it. His paintings and drawings of the Titanic, some of them look like they were done by an adult. One, he had over 100 windows drawn in. One pencil drawing, he has all the levels of the ship. Like if you cut the ship in half and you can see all the different rooms and everything. He knew the ship. He knew it by heart. You can't learn that by watching the movie. The movie actually was more about a love story, and Jamey was completely distraught over the fact that the people in the boiler room died first. Like it was his fault that they were trapped.
I figured he'd seen the movie, which was a popular movie at the time, and maybe that's why he was into it. But the form of obsession that he had with it, I knew wasn't normal. So I was a little creeped out.
He started talking about the accident itself and how it shouldn't have happened. That there were mistakes, there were corners cut, and the men in the boiler rooms should not have been trapped. And he would cry about it.
He was obsessed with what happened to that ship and what happened to the people on that ship, and kept saying things like, it shouldn't have happened, it shouldn't have happened. So he was obsessed with the tragedy of the Titanic. When it started to get really obvious that this was all he wanted to deal with, I did start to think maybe he needed some sort of therapy about it. Like maybe he was so traumatized by the movie and we just didn't realize it, that this was his way of working out that trauma, but it just seems so unlikely, especially considering all the other things that kids are exposed to these days. Why would the sinking of a ship 100 years ago be that upsetting?
It was horrible to watch. I mean, I would cry with him. He acted like he was responsible for the accident.
He had so much knowledge about the ship and such an interest in it that we thought there has to be some other deeper connection.
I had always grew up with the belief of reincarnation. So it was a very common thing for me to think that, you know, yes, there might be more than just this one life. And I had that attitude with Jamey. I didn't say, oh, that's ridiculous, or, you know, where did you get this stuff from? I started collecting it. I started making a journal. It slowly dawned on me that, you know, he had to have been on this ship. There's just no way that he would know all these things.
We talked about the idea of it being a past life. Maybe he had been on the Titanic.
When he was 5 years old, he was telling me some of the mistakes that they made in building the ship. Using iron instead of steel was wrong. He was 5. He was telling me these things. And he said that when the ship hit the iceberg, the emergency doors trapped everybody in the boiler room. He would sob and say, they died first, Mama. They died first. You don't understand. And I would try to comfort him and say, oh, no, honey, I understand. And then he would wail and he'd say, no, you don't understand. It shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have died that way. That was a mistake. Then I started thinking maybe he helped build the ship, that he had something to do with the construction of the ship itself.
My mom had brought up the idea of a past life because she believes in the supernatural, and I'm exactly the opposite. She thought that it was a past life because of the obsession, because of him wanting to know so much more about it. My argument was that a lot of kids are obsessed with certain things, specifically that Hollywood portrays. There's a whole generation of kids that were obsessed with Star Wars. I wouldn't consider them to have a past life. But she kept bringing up the details that he seemed to know. And the more I argued against it, his behavior just kept progressing. So I was starting to wonder who was right.
He would draw the 4 smokestacks with smoke only coming out of 3. And I asked him, why isn't this one working? He must have been 4 or 5 years old. He said, that's a dummy stack, Mama. That's for show. And I said, what do you mean that's for show? It's not real. They didn't use it. They only needed 3, but they thought 4 would be better. I didn't know that. I didn't know that till years later when I saw documentaries done on the Titanic.
The turning point for me would be when he got a game of the Titanic. It's a computer game.
During this time that he had an obsession with the Titanic, I didn't want to discourage him about talking about it. I didn't want him to stuff it in and then have it come out later. So we finally got a CD-ROM game for him to play.
So we opened it up, put it in the CD-ROM player. The game starts, and the concept of the game is that you have to find these clues throughout the ship to stop the ship from sinking. The interesting part of the game is that you're the point of view that you're on the ship. So you're not looking from above or any of the typical views of Titanic. You're actually on the ship. And one of the first things you're supposed to do is go someplace specific. I think that it was the captain's quarters. And he starts really emphatically saying to go port. Go port, go port. And I'm like, well, why don't we just go this way? We're just gonna look around. He's like, no, go port. And so I just go with it. And he takes me exactly to where we're supposed to be going without making any wrong turns, without searching for anything. I mean, the whole point of the game is that you're supposed to search for stuff on the ship. And he knew exactly where this room was with no preparation at all. I was freaked out. I was really freaked out. The most intelligent person, if you see maps from above, it's not the same as being in the point of view. And so I just couldn't figure out how he did it. It didn't make sense to me. And that's when my viewpoint started to shift.
So after Jamey was having memories of the Titanic for almost 2 years, as we studied the Titanic and the history of it, we had finally come to the conclusion about who he was.
Our 3-year-old daughter, Thalia, started having memories of this old lady that needed her help and was dying, and she couldn't help her, and then she started having memories of being Japanese. I don't like seeing my little girl upset, and as a dad, you want to fix it.
My family and I moved from the villages up to the main city of San Jose, hoping to make some money painting murals or doing paint finishes.
We were hustling pretty hard to find designers, to meet architects, to look at their work and see how we could do something with them. It was a stressful endeavor to hunt for work every day. I mean, literally pounding the pavement, going door to door.
One day, just to pass the time, Daryl had taken some old newspaper and started painting.
And I was doing this to decompress, to de-stress over how difficult it was being to provide. Thalia walks up to me and she says, "Hey, Daddy, can I try?"
She came in and she wanted to try, and I think at that time she was 4.
I put some ink on the brush and I handed it to her. And she just draws out these 2 Japanese characters and puts the brush down and walks away. And these were very good. So I had to look it up. And it said home. Love and home. Not home in the house sense, home in the family sense. So that's profound.
She'd always had that ability, to write letters and things like that, just seemed practically born with it. But to do these Japanese characters is just amazing.
It kind of felt like she was sending me a message. I was doing this to decompress, to relax over how difficult it was being to pay bills, pay rent, and keep our house. And then when she comes up and does that, talk about decompress, it was just like, right. It was like, remember, wake up. We are home. You're home. This is home.
We moved from Costa Rica back to the States because it was really hard to make a living. I mean, we could survive, but it was like scratching dirt.
Thalia was about 6 when we'd made the move. This house we live in now, we got this house specifically because it had an outside room, and I could turn that into a polishing studio. And she comes in and she says, "Hey, Daddy, remember when I told you about being Japanese?" Of course I do. How are you gonna forget that? And she says, well, something popped in my head, and she grabbed a Sharpie and drew this symbol. I looked down and I thought, oh, that's interesting. It looks like a leaf pattern with a circle in it. When she did the Japanese characters and sent me kind of a sign then, I thought this could be another one of those. It reminded me of like a family symbols, the family crests. And I thought, I might look into that just to see. She remembers being Japanese. Maybe that's a family crest. I don't know, but I'd certainly be interested to find out. I went online. I discovered kamons are a Japanese family crest. I thought, yeah, maybe I can find this kamon on the internet. I found some very similar. Thing is about trying to research that is most of the sites are in Japanese. I don't read Japanese. I think it's interesting to consider, her love of medicine, or their memories of being Japanese, or memories of these ill child and an adult. And the symbol of the family crest, is there a connection there? I think there very well could be. Something was happening. Maybe that's what she's telling me. I thought she was having a memory of a past life. Our daughter, Thalia, began having memories of an old lady who needed help, who was sick. She began having memories of being Japanese, and she wrote Japanese calligraphy out of the blue. She grabbed a Sharpie and drew this symbol. It reminded me of like a family crest. I think it's interesting to consider her love of medicine, or their memories of being Japanese, memories of these ill child and an adult. And the symbol of the family crest, is there a connection there? I think there very well could be.
Thalia had started expressing that she was frightened of large buildings.
My wife Heather had taken Thalia to an air museum.
And we went into this museum and she couldn't take it. She was so frightened. She was shaking and clinging to me.
Then she started to cry. And she said, no, it's gonna fall down. It's gonna fall down. She was certain that the building is gonna collapse.
I was concerned that it would become worse and become difficult for her to function.
I don't like seeing my little girl upset, and she was very upset. Recently, a documentary came on the history of the atomic bomb. And she watched the entire thing with me without saying a word, just glued to it. I mean, for a kid, I wouldn't think that would be very interesting to them. I asked Thalia, I says, so what if these things are related? The caring and the old lady, the young girl dying, and the fear of buildings falling on you. Do you think it's possible you were at the end of World War II in Japan when the nuclear bombs went off? And she grabs me by both shoulders and shakes me and says, that makes sense. That was her reaction to the idea.
When Thalia started talking about her memories of a past life, Daryl and I feel that it's important to listen to children and hear where they're coming from and not just assume things are make-believe or in their minds.
My name is Thalia, and I'm 10 years old. I do have interest to see about other things that I may have done so that I can have closure and be able to move on and live normal.
Maybe there's something there that can be dealt with, something that can be exercised. You know, I'm thinking that maybe she has this memory of a building falling on her, of something happening, you know. We have a chance here to get some answers. If it's there, we'll find it.
After years of Jamey's memories of the Titanic and the night terrors and the fear of deep water and all the drawings and the paintings he made, we had finally come to the conclusion that he was having a past life memory. We were just hoping that we would find closure and have peace with it. We didn't match him up with anybody right away, but as we studied the Titanic and the history of it, Jamey could have been one of the designers. His name was Thomas Andrews.
We felt like Jamey had a connection with the ship's architect, Thomas Andrews, and he was very interested in the whole shipbuilding side of it.
Thomas Andrews designed several ships for the White Star Line, and it was his habit of going on all the maiden voyages of the ships that he helped design and build. And on the Titanic, the night that they were sinking, he chose not to get on a lifeboat and went down with the ship. Andrews was the chief designer. He was the one that was fighting with J.P. Morgan, who financed the Titanic. He fought with him over the fact that they didn't have enough lifeboats, the fact that they were trying to get the ship done by a certain date, so they weren't constructing it as carefully as they could have been. Thomas Andrews wanted to use steel, and they used iron, and then of course, once the iron, which wasn't as strong as steel, got in the sub-zero temperatures of the water, it became brittle. So that was another reason why the ship literally broke apart. When you read about Thomas Andrews, it fit with what Jamey said. They took the Titanic exhibit across the country, and as soon as my daughter Teal heard that they were coming to Chicago, we bought tickets immediately and figured Jamey has to go see it.
The things that he was experiencing were becoming more and more intense, and the obsession had been going on for so long that I thought maybe if he is exposed to things that were actually there, maybe something will click in him and it won't be such an obsession anymore. Maybe if he gets closer to it, it'll make things better, because I wanted him to be able to be a normal kid.
When we got there, they had so many artifacts, and Jamey looked at everything in detail.
All the other kids at the exhibit were just looking, running, playing. Jamey, however, studied every single piece that they had on display.
I didn't realize how big of a deal it was going to be until I saw he was shaking and almost breathless. And then I started realizing that maybe this was going to be more heavy than I thought it was going to be.
When we went to the Titanic exhibit, I was hoping that there would be something that would turn the corner for Jamey. But it was after the exhibit that Jamey had the dream that I call the death dream. Jamey's memories of the Titanic went on for almost 2 years. Jamey was completely distraught over the fact that the people in the boiler room died first, like it was his fault that they were trapped. It was so sad, like heartbreaking. When we went to the Titanic exhibit in Chicago, I was hoping that there would be something that would turn the corner for Jamey. But it was after the exhibit that Jamey had the dream that I call the death dream. He had been suffering from night terrors for a couple of years. Well, one night, this was after we had seen the exhibit, I was home alone with Jamey. He was in bed asleep, and I was watching television, and all of a sudden I heard a bang on his bedroom wall. It was rhythmic. It was bang, 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 bang. And I jumped up, and I ran down the hallway, and I flung the door open, and Jamey was up on all fours on his bed. He was staring at the floor, and he was almost convulsing. He was shaking so hard. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was terrified, and I didn't know if I should, like, shake him out of it. And before I could even do anything, he screamed, and I cannot tell you the terror in his voice. He screamed, "She's going down." It didn't sound like a little boy. It sounded like a man. And I started to cry.
She called me and didn't know what to do about it. It was very upsetting.
You know, it was the worst night terror he'd ever had, and I think the exhibit probably brought that up because he got so close to the things that maybe in a prior life he had seen at the end of his life.
But after that night, it was a day or two, he would talk about the Titanic. And then it was a week, he'd talk about the Titanic. Then it was 2 weeks. And slowly, he just stopped talking about it. And I really felt that through all of that brought him to the memory of actually the ship sinking. And once he experienced that, it was over. It was over.
I was happy. I was very happy that it seemed to just kind of naturally transition, that it was there for the longest time, and then it just seemed to fall away, and everything else that Jamey is now came more into focus.
My name is Jamey, and I'm 19 years old. I am in college right now, and I'm studying animation, 3D modeling, and concept art. It just seemed like I had all these different memories at the time that really didn't make sense, and the Titanic was as familiar as my house was to me. I would like to think that I was probably Thomas Andrews just because of the personality traits, and what he did is what I would have done. He gave himself up to let others get off the ship. And it was a horrible tragedy in history, and I don't know, I'm just very at peace with it, than knowing that I died on the Titanic.
I think Jamey's past life experience for him proved to him that we do come around more than once. He's a great believer in that. And it gives him, I think, excitement for the future that he's capable of doing anything.
I hope that he is successful in whatever he does, and that if he does fail at something, that he doesn't go down with the ship this time. That he forgives himself and just moves on.
The Titanic will always be in connection to me some way, and it's always going to be a part of me, but it's just about living this life now. And I no longer feel like it's my fault.
I asked Thalia, I says, what if these things are related? The caring and the old lady and the young girl dying and the fear of buildings falling on you. Do you think it's possible you were at the end of World War II in Japan when the nuclear bombs went off? She thought about it for a second, and she stands up, and she grabs me by both shoulders and shakes me and says, "That makes sense." You know, that was her reaction to the idea.
I do have interest to see about other things that I may have done so that I can have closure, be able to move on and live normal.
Maybe there's something there that can be dealt with, something that can be exercised. Whatever happened to her in a past life, maybe she has this memory of a building falling on her. There should be a way so she can get over it. The Japanese family crest that Thalia drew, what I think is a kamon, I think that deserves some more research, so we've contacted a Japanese expert in kamon in Los Angeles. And Thalia and I are gonna take a trip to Los Angeles to meet her. very, very anxious to see what she has to say.
First, I saw the picture that you had sent me that, Thalia, you had drawn, and I was fascinated when I saw it. This is a kamon for hiragi, which is the holly tree, and the holly tree is considered to be very sacred in Japan.
It definitely looks like what I drew.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so. They do have the list of the names of people who use this crest the most often in Japan. And I'm wondering if that might ring a bell to hear some of the names, if any of them sound familiar.
Kusano seems like sort of familiar.
Just kind of a gut feeling?
Now, I can tell you where the families came from and where they live now. One area is Tottori, which is in Kyoto, which is in the southwestern part of Japan. And you mentioned buildings falling down. You mentioned taking care of an old woman and some children that were very sick, and you were like a medic taking care of them. There's a very well documented group of medics and nurses who were sent from Tottori into Hiroshima to take care of the people after the atom bomb. And as you know, a lot of people were very, very sick for a long time. And, you know, buildings were falling down. So it's hard to say definitively, you know, what it means,
Right.
but, you know, there's just some possibilities that you could look at.
You want to know more?
It's very exciting. Thank you so much for letting me research your kamon. It was very, very exciting for me.
Thanks for researching it. I feel very happy because I think that the things that I learned today can help me because I know I'll be able to get closer and be able to really connect and know what happened and where I was in my past life. It would be pretty cool to travel to Japan and find my past life family because if I have closure, I can be able to be Thalia and I don't need to be stuck in the past.
Sue, the Japanese kamon expert, with our meeting today, she gave us a direction and an area to focus on and a place to go. So we're definitely going to be making a trip to Japan at some point. We would love to do that, and I think when we can, we will.